Saturday, Atlanta United family. I hope you are all doing well and have had a wonderful Saturday. It's been a little bit chillier than I would have thought, possibly hoping it would stay in the mid-70s. I don't know. It was a weird fantasy that I had, apparently. But I'm here, obviously, joined by my co-host and partner in crime, as I have just learned that this means cool in his vocabulary. John Nelson, how are you doing tonight? What do you got going on?
Keeping my head on a swivel, looking at Inter Miami and Montreal, who are going at it at Red Bull Arena in a few minutes. 7 absences tonight for Montreal. It'll play into the standings in the East, as did the game earlier on this afternoon with Chicago and Kansas City. We'll get into that later on.
We'll talk about that later on, but we're starting off the show tonight as Atlanta sitting 11th, which is not something we want at all. So this show is obviously going to be very crucial. A lot of information is going to be given on how we could possibly up that standing. Obviously, the games that are being played right now also affect that standing as well. So it should be a really interesting night. And then John said, of course, if there's any updates or goals that are scored while we are live on air, he will let us know.
It's right over there on the monitor. So my head's on a swivel. Possibility that we'll be joined by a very special guest coming up in just a little while as a part of the show. And obviously, Jason will come in to run the anchor leg and bring in his perspectives for the match tomorrow night as Hartford FC, otherwise known as Toronto FC, playing in Hartford, goes up against Atlanta United.
Exactly. Yeah, Jason coming in as all good runners do at the end of a rally race, just a relay race, just taking it home for the team for the gold medal. Exactly. All right, so let's go ahead and start diving into this a little bit because there's a lot to decompress from the Atlanta United versus Miami match. Obviously, we came out with a point, which is a hard-fought point. This is something that you guys have talked about, obviously, very much on Soccer Down Here the past couple days, obviously since Thursday, Friday. You guys have discussed this. It was a heartfelt win, basically. So the guys put a lot of effort in. Obviously, the first half was not pretty, and it's not something one should go back and rewatch. But the second half definitely looked like they had a good talking to at halftime, and they stepped up ready to play. And then it's also something that should be interesting to sort of dissect. It almost felt like the minute that Atlanta United were scored on, they woke up, right? Like it's this sort of gut reaction that Atlanta's been having a couple times this year where they've gotten punched in the chin and they come back and fight. And then here we go, obviously 80th minute when Breck Shea makes that beautiful run and has a fantastic goal. There's really nothing you can do about that. Defender was a little flat-footed, so that can change. But as far as Brad trying to stop that, it's just a great goal and a great cross. But you obviously see them bounce back 3 minutes later with that goal from the assist from Jurgen Damm and the goal from Jake Mulraney. But let's go ahead and start going into the actual match, right? So obviously Atlanta United poor in the first 45. They really had a lot of sloppy passes. There wasn't a lot being connected. If you go back and actually rewatch the highlights, there is absolutely no highlights from Atlanta United. It's positively Inter Miami, which is just another component that needs to be discussed in this dissection of the match because Atlanta played a very defensive game because they had to. Miami were threatening all night.
Well, at the same time, the absences that you had going in, you didn't have Franco Escobar. You didn't have obviously you didn't have Ezequiel Barco. You didn't have Moreno as a part of that either, and so you really didn't have the offensive names and the firepower that you're used to. Yes, you had Brooks Lennon as a part of it. Your midfield was Heinemann, Rometty, Larunowicz. You had John Gallagher. You gave Manuel Castro a start. Castro put in 57, and then he was removed. And you were looking once again. You're looking for things from Manuel Castro, and he was just kind of there. So you have Adam John who got the start as well, and so you're dealing with the fatigue, you're dealing with schedule compression, and you're dealing with absences at the same time. And so this was the lineup that you had out there for Stephen Glass and Atlanta United. But we'll take it a half at a time. But yeah, I think that for the first 20 minutes, it was Atlanta United on the back foot. Inter Miami was on the front foot. It took a while for that first sustained bit of possession for Atlanta United to get into the attacking third. And really, you're sitting there and you're waiting for those relationships to start. It took a little while, but once again, it was the field had tilted in that first 20 to 25 for Inter Miami.
Yeah, for sure. But one of the key points that we should be taking away from this was just how incredibly good our back line was that night. Obviously, Anton Walkes got your guys' obviously Mike and Jason's man of the match. But it was sort of a split decision between Miles Robinson and Anton Walkes that game. Miles obviously had the matchup between Gonzalo Higuain. And as we saw within the 6th minute, I mean, huge save from Brad from Higuain. Obviously, he's very dangerous in the box. It's something that we knew going into it head on. And then you see in the 14th minute, a huge block from Miles Robinson just to make sure that he tracks back to the box and that shot is not in the back of the net from Gonzalo Higuain, which, again, leads to that point in time of with both Anton Walkes and Miles Robinson in that game, they kept us in the first 45. They kept us in a lot of that game. And I think that there's a huge point to be taken from that, just how comfortable Anton Walkes is as somebody who came in as not somebody who was supposed to be starting and filled that position and is obviously giving a Meza run for his money. Escobar depends on when he's healthy if he can also give Escobar a run for his money, but he's obviously clearly solidifying his role as a solution for our back line. And then we go and talk about Miles Robinson. In some ways, it feels like night and day for Miles Robinson when we talk about him playing last year and him playing this year. And I mean it in the sense of that his attitude and his demeanor on the ball, the way that he goes and attacks games now and makes sure that, as you saw a couple times in the match, he didn't wait for the forwards to come to him or for the players to come to him. He stepped up and made sure that when they received that ball, they knew he was there. And that's extremely crucial in trying to solidify that back line. I mean, it feels like a different Miles, an edgier, angrier Miles.
Well, and think about the depth that is a part of this discussion. And you look at Bello on the left. You have Anton, who has been one of the most underrated signings that we've seen so far with his work. You see Miles coming back and he's coming back healthy with his work. Great. You didn't have Escobar, but you had Lennon on the right. But at the same time, you add in a healthy Fernando Meza as a part of this. You bring in Franco Escobar as a part of the equation. And let me bring in Jarrett Smith to the discussion. And Jarrett, we're talking about the back line and really how they've been coming together as a unit, and having this depth of individuals will come in handy down the stretch where you can have 6 guys at your disposal in theory for those 4 spots at the back, and they're all becoming very comfortable with each other.
They are, and you're in a situation where you're not quite to Toronto in 2018 level when it comes to injuries and you're digging into depth. But it is interesting to me that you're playing Toronto now after you have just been playing a carousel of defenders, guys playing on either side of the left or right center back role. You've had every possible combination imaginable, and now you've started to kind of find some consistency. And what sucks is every time it feels like you found, hey, such and such is a really good matchup together, somebody either gets injured or, gets suspended or something weird happens, and you end up in a situation where you're having to change things up a little bit, just a little bit. That might throw the chemistry off, or it might not. There's no real telling. Miles Robinson looks healthy for the first time since a while. He looks like the version of Miles Robinson you saw in 2019, where he's just a physical force who is figuring out how to read the game and looking like that center back who's going to go to Europe pretty soon. Because honestly, it's funny to me that we're having these Brendan Aronson discussions nationally because of the money he's going to generate for Philadelphia. Aronson will not be the most expensive one in the next few years that goes to Europe, who is a homegrown or an American player that comes through his organization. Hopefully Miles just continues to do what he's been doing. I don't know what the ideal combination is right now at center back, though. I mean, maybe it's Miles and Franco. I feel like even Meza, who's kind of dropped off of the rotation a bit, like he's not starting games. Remember Meza, when he was out early in the restart of the season after Orlando, things weren't great. He came back in and kind of stabilized things with that Parkhurst style being able to read the ball, being able to read the game, and make the plays with his mind as much as with his body. So I don't know what the ideal setup is for that back line now, but for me it is kind of funny, peculiar that you're going to have to play Toronto, a team that when Atlanta won their title was running Michael Bradley out there at center back because of injuries, because of suspensions. Shall we revisit the Vanderveel signing of yesteryear?
Let's not do that. Jerry, you obviously bring in a good point that we should also discuss about not only the back line, but also the midfield. Obviously, the midfield itself has had a lot of injuries. It's had new players come in, very obviously with Moreno. But we are now seeing this mix-up with what feels like almost all of Atlanta United, that there's not a set-defined starting 11, period. Whether it's on the back line, whether it's on the midfield, whether it's who starts, what we see on the wings, this type of thing. It's an interchanging, mixable group of guys that sort of seem to make it work right now, but this is sort of highlighted in the midfield, right? Huseto obviously got injured. That sort of pulled him out of it. And he's been inconsistent at times, so it's a point of time whether he's good to go. Hyndman has been better recently than he was at the beginning of this year. There was a little bit of issues with him as far as turnovers and things like that at the beginning of the year, but Hyndman has been more solid the last couple of games that he's been on, and he's obviously earned that starting spot day in and day out. Obviously, we saw Jeff, who got very winded at the end of that game, but has been a rock in our midfield for us. And unfortunately, we don't see the rock that we saw in Eric Remedi as we have seen in previous years, and he sort of tapered off and become inconsistent and made some very simple errors that shouldn't have been made. So it feels like there's a rotation of guys also in the midfield that don't have a solid starting base. Who could we possibly see tomorrow with going against a Toronto team that's extremely good in the midfield?
So there's different elements of this to me. For instance, with Remedi, Glass has talked about with Remedi that he feels, I think he mentioned that he thinks he may have pushed Remedi a little bit too hard coming out of Orlando and getting back into regular play, where he leaned on Remedi a lot. And it's understandable because when Eric Remedi is on, Eric Remedi is as steady of a 6'8" you're going to find that's not on a big number. He's not necessarily spectacular. He can be, but he's going to be steady. And I think Glass mentioned leaning on him a lot and maybe leaned on him a little too much. How quickly does he come back in the picture? Emerson Hyndman was great in March. Then Emerson Hyndman wasn't so great. At the risk of giving him an excuse where he doesn't need one, or mislabeling it, I keep going back to the fact that Emerson Hyndman was one of the guys who had COVID, and I don't know how much that might have impacted him physically. And he seems to have really rebounded. I'm really impressed with Hyndman because his back was against the wall with this team a couple weeks ago. When you had Moreno coming in, you were thinking, okay, somebody's going to be the odd man out, and it looked like Hyndman for a while. Right now, I'm hard pressed to take him out of the lineup, especially with what we saw. If you see Marcelino Moreno, with what we saw with him and Hyndman combining in that 45 minutes where Moreno played with Hyndman, I want to see more of that with Hyndman getting forward and combining with him and being that aggressor and bringing the game to Toronto, running at a Michael Bradley, running at that back line, being that guy. As far as Jeff goes, Jeff's going to give you as much as he can, but, at this point, that stamina bar just doesn't refill the same as it does every week. I think we've talked about this. That's something you got to look at doing in the off season, is going and getting yourself a number 6, like a TAM number 6, and a real, a destroyer number 6. A young Jeff would be great if you can find it. I know that is a lot easier said than done. I can't count on Jeff Larentowicz going into 2021. Wouldn't ask anyone to.
Time Machine? Come on.
Time Machine would be great. Another guy who I think deserves a shout here is Mo Adams.
Yes.
Mo Adams has started to play more in 2020, like the 2019 version that a lot of us saw at Atlanta United 2 when Stephen Glass was putting him out there and asking him to not just be is it fair to call it like almost like a Forrest Lasso playing a 6 as he was in Chicago, where it was like, don't worry about you ever playing the ball, just be a destroyer. And there was all the talk about, well, he can't play with the ball at his feet. Glassy made him play with the ball at his feet, and he improved. He turned out some great performances, and he's transferred those performances into 2020's midfield. And I mean, he still has some of that destroyer in him. Honestly, so does Lawrence Weick, and Glassy trusts Weick a lot after playing with him last year, and we've seen him deploy him to the midfield late in games this year. So for this one, man, what are we thinking? Like 4-3-3 as usual. So let's say Barco is healthy. I don't know. Man, I'd be really tempted to go with Lorenowitz if he can give it to me. Moreno and Barco. If not, then Moreno and Heinemann.
So basically, you're looking at, say, some combination of Jeff and Mo for the full 90 minutes in that particular position. With if Jeff can give you 60, Mo gives you 30, or the other way around, depending on fitness.
That's what I'd like to see. And honestly, for me, because this is something, and Kelly, you talked about it's not a set starting 11. This isn't like with Tata, where remember 2017 and 18. Unless there was an injury, we could write that lineup down in pen 2 days before the game, and it was going to be right. Everything we put down was going to be right. I think this is what Frank was going for. Granted, we know how all that ended. It just the way it didn't work out. But I think this was what he had in mind was, I want a deep team that is deep at multiple positions with guys having gladiator battles and practices, and playing the hot hand in the midfield and playing the hot hand out wide if that needs to be. If that's, what Jake Mulraney is on a run. And we saw it last year with Justin Mirren when he was playing out wide, and he was playing out of his mind at parts of the season. So I think that's what they were going for. It's not necessarily easy to set it in stone. And right now I'm playing those hot hands of Jeff Lorenowitz and Mo Adams on that defensive side, a combination of that. And Marcelino Moreno, if he can go, that'd be awesome. And I'd love to pair him with Heinemann again because of what they were able to create together. Because I think from an outside perspective watching it, it just looked to me like he was feeding confidence and swagger to Heinemann when they were on the field together.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we also need to talk about is out on the wings, right? Obviously, we've seen the explosiveness of Jürgen Damm. He assisted in the goal to Jake Mulraney. We obviously know Jake Mulraney is very fast. Same with Lennon. Lennon did pick up that injury to the ankle, whether or not that's sustainable over this gap of time between Thursday and tomorrow to see if he plays, and it's to be seen, obviously. But something should be said about the run of Lennon. Lennon's played a lot of minutes. Do we see him being tired? I mean, without a sense of what my brain is trying to say, but basically exhausted to the point where he needs that relief. He needs that break. And then do we see then a different mix-up of what we had? I mean, obviously we've seen Jake Mulraney come into this situation, but we've also seen, if we can get it, Jürgen Damm and Gallagher switching sides and then being able to cut in as inverted wingers. Do we see something like that as well? It's this constant conversation that we're having where it, to your point, very valid, that with Tata, we knew who would be on that lineup. It feels like a game of Tetris right now on what fits where and if it makes sense.
Well, but let me present it to you this way. And I think that in dealing with schedule compression, this is literally looking at the matchup in front of you and seeing, okay, right now, since this is the last matchup before you get a week off and can have practices and regen and all that, I think it's, what can you give me? What can you give me? What can you give me? Can you give me 60? Can you give me 45? Can you give me 90? And then trying to figure out your lineup from there with the matchups that you're going up against in this particular case, going up against Toronto. And so obviously with them at the top of the ladder, it presents some challenges, but you're dealing with right now a team that is hovering right around the playoff bar. going up against a team that you don't know what you're going to be getting in their starting 11. Do they rest folks? It's another question across the board. Do they rest folks going into this week break, knowing what their matchups are down the line? Do they rotate out, or is it going to be the same lineup that they had last time? And I think that while you look at what folks can give you and what they can, I think you also are taking into account what you're going up against and trying to figure out what your starting 11 is. And I think that with the depth of positions, Jarrett, that Atlanta United have going up against Toronto, it literally is going up and down the line. And I know that folks are going to sit there. You're going to ask, it's like, okay, what can you give me? Then, of course, you're going to say 90, right, Jarrett?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to say 90 minutes because they want to play 90 minutes. And, they're going to say that. And then you're going to see, who can really do 90 minutes and who can't. Look, if Brooks Lennon can't go, I think your decision gets really easy of, okay, cool, Franco Escobar, right back, center back, probably Miles, probably Anton. Cool, we're done here. If he can go, it gets a little trickier of, do you want him playing up the field? Do you want him playing right back and sliding Franco in on that center back role where he has been really good? And then as far as getting out on top of the wings, I mean, it's still for me is Jurgen Damm can give you whatever he can give you. And I think this is one for me where I'm starting him and I'm seeing how much he can give me to start the game, because the way Atlanta has been so shaky at the start of games and has taken themselves out of a number of games this year. They've been better about it lately, but they've taken themselves out of games early. And if Jurgen Damm can kind of flip that script to start a game, that's what I want to see, where he can, put a lot of pressure on the defense. So if Brooks Lennon can't go, I think that's an easy call of, okay, Franco's playing right back. We're going to start with Damm and see what he can give us. Left side, man, how about this? If everyone's healthy, I know we haven't seen him in like a month plus, but Ezequiel Barco playing out there in like a free role, underneath whatever striker it may be, probably Adam John in that instance, and old Pellofoot just playing 1-2s with him, with Marcelino Moreno and Emerson Heinemann sitting in that midfield. I mean, I'd be fine with that if Barco can't go, which given what we haven't seen, even if he can go, I'm not sure he gives you 45. I mean, just because even if he's practicing, I just worry about him having 90 minutes of game fitness, just because, man, games are different than practice. The amount of time that you're going to be just exerting yourself to max capacity is different in a game than it is in practice, because we're not talking about practice. Practice.
Not talking about practice?
No. Talking about the game he kills himself for and gets fouled a lot in. Otherwise, I mean, you stay with John Gallagher on the left side. If he's not playing up top, and you keep Adam John there up top, probably, because John, the more he has played, John has just been kind of like, he's just kind of been an old car that you just leave running and it gets warmer and warmer and does better and better. So, I mean, I think Gallagher's gotten better too, as far as being able to put together longer performances, because we've seen flashes from him, but those flashes have gotten longer and longer. Instead of being 30 minutes of outstanding play, then it was 45, then it's 55 minutes, then we're creeping up towards 60, 70 minutes of John Gallagher not disappearing because he's tired from, just kind of building up into the game, not just physically, but mentally. So I think for me, it hinges on the right side. The thesis here being hinges on the right side with Brooks Lennon. If he can't go, then I'm starting Damm, and I'm getting everything I can out of him early to try and flip the script on Toronto and do what you should have done in the Eastern Conference Finals if Joseph puts away that penalty, and you try and kill them off early. And on the left side, depending on Barco's health, I think I'm sticking John Gallagher out there and seeing what he can do. Jake Mulraney's a really tempting option, though, off the bench, which is what I thought Jake Mulraney's role would be coming into the season anyway, is a speed merchant who can win 1v1 battles. And then, as we saw in the goal the other night, a guy who can, when the break is on, can absolutely tear apart the back door of the defense.
I agree. So you actually bring a good point. Let's start talking about Toronto. Obviously, they are the first in the league in the East. They are ahead by everybody by about 3 points. The second, obviously, is that Philadelphia Union team, which is creeping up as well. They are who they play against next weekend. So as John was saying, that they have some big games coming up, obviously against Philadelphia Union next weekend, and then the game immediately after that is NYC FC. So they've got two big teams, two big games coming up after Atlanta United. They've had some injuries. Obviously, two of their star players, Michael Bradley, still injured. Josie Altidore still injured. But they still have, obviously, the threat of Pozuelo, who is, again, an MVP candidate, probably will get MVP this year. Incredible player, and that's who they run their team through. When we're playing against Toronto, when you obviously see them playing Toronto versus New York Red Bulls, they sit and they do a lot of their transitions in the midfield, right? They look for those interceptions in the midfield. They look for quick transitions, that type of thing. They are dangerous on the ball with the 1-2s. Toronto is a team that you have to be switched on for, and this is something that Atlanta United has struggled a little bit with. Obviously, the past couple of games, it's not been as much, but this is a team that you cannot be, quote-unquote, taking a nap or having a second where you just fall asleep at the wheel. How do we see Toronto matching up against us? And in some ways, how do we see Toronto as a threat? Obviously, being first in the league, that means they're extremely good. They've won a bunch of games. They've lost, I think, only 2, and they've tied about 5. So you're looking at a team that's extremely dangerous and has a knack for winning this season.
Yep, 11-2-5 coming into this particular matchup. Scoring update from Red Bull Arena. A goal by Bojan from about 30 on an absolute rocket past McCarthy. So Montreal now has a 1-0 lead. And it was also complete with the Dragon Ball Z celebration with Maxi Urruti, who got the assist.
No! I hate it.
So your live standings.
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
Yeah, Montreal had now is if the live standings are accurate at MLSsoccer.com, Montreal is now in 8th at 23 points. Inter Miami is still a point behind Atlanta at 18, and so that's where we are with that live scoring update. But I mean, I look at this lineup that they trot out, and I see Chris Mavinga, who can be had with speed. I see Omar Gonzalez, he can be had with speed. Auro has been tremendous at the back. Richie Larea hasn't met a falling down that he hasn't embraced completely. So I look at the back, and I think that speed from Atlanta United can be an activator here. But going up against a Toronto side like this, Jarrett, for me, that's the question. When you're coming off of a match with short rest, you come off a match that was the grinder that this was, where you come out of it with a point where you didn't quit. You showed a lot of grit, a lot of heart, and it was a tremendous back and forth game, especially in the last 20 to 25 minutes. Really, for me, you look at the midfield for Toronto, and in the past, if you've cut off the supply lines to somebody like a Pozuelo, then that has helped out whoever's gone up against Toronto. What are you looking at?
I am looking at the fact that I see a lot of good men in this locker room. Good men do not win games. I need you to be a bastard. I need you all.
I've said this multiple times.
To be bastards.
I keep saying this. They need to be the C word. They need to be the C word.
They have been at times in the last few games. I think that Miles Robinson might be hanging out with George Campbell a little bit because he's starting to show it as well. And George Campbell has that mean streak that a lot of people who watch the first team but haven't watched Atlanta United 2 don't get that. Yeah. George Campbell is that dude you might be looking for, who is a freak athletically, but also has like a Greg Blue level mean streak in him. To harken back to mid-2000s UGA football a bit.
There you go.
But I need you to be a bastard on the field. Don't be nice about this. This is going to involve, look, you have one of the most foul players in the league in Ezequiel Barco. Flip the script. See how many times you can take a piece out of Pozuelo. See how many times you can take a piece out of their midfield, out of a Richie Larea. And you don't want to do it, 25 yards from goal and a good free kick opportunity where you can give them a chance for a clean-looking goal or anything like that. But, they get out in transition. And it's not like an obvious yellow card where it's, where it's impeding play. Oh, we're taking out shin guards. We're taking a piece of skin with us. And in those situations, just be a monster about it.
And I think that
you don't want to injure. Oh yeah, you don't want to injure anybody. I'm not saying that. Please don't take it that way.
No.
You're not trying to end someone's season. You're not trying to give someone a Virgil van Dijk situation, which sucked today.
Oh.
But Atlanta has watched this against Miami, not only in this last game, but in so many games. Rack up 20-something fouls. You've done it before. You did it in D.C. You had, I think, 20, 25 fouls, was it, against D.C.? Now, I know Toronto and D.C. are about as far polar opposites as clubs can possibly be. But, man, give me some of that just bastardry.
You just want some more John, almost clothes hanging people? Like when he did.
If it happens, it happens. It happens.
I mean,
don't show them. You don't want to show them an abundance of respect because they're not going to show you abundance of respect. You think Toronto is going to come in there and be nice about this? Nah. They'll be cynical if they have to be. They're not going to be nice about this. Marcelino Moreno gets out on the break. Someone's going to grab him by the shirt collar and give him the old horse collar.
Mm-hmm.
They will, absolutely. Don't be nice about this. Chivalry is dead in this game.
Yeah, absolutely agree. This definitely needs to be something where you're going against a team that obviously has the ability to score, to win games. Again, I agree with you. You do need to be a bastard. You need to absolutely make them hate you. But at the same point in time, you need to make it incredibly hard for them to play against you in any facet of form, whether it's just your aggression on the ball, obviously played well. You don't want to get any yellow cards that are not needed, not any second yellow cards, obviously, or any dangerous tackles, but you need to be in their face and let them know that you might think or you might be first in the standings, but you're going to have to get past us one way or another, and we're not going to make it easy for you. So I absolutely agree with you. This is something that Atlanta United's needed to happen numerous times. We've seen it in certain games. We've seen it at the last 45, I would say the last 20 minutes of the Inter-Miami game, where you see that fight and you see that, hey, we are not going down without a fight here. You score a goal on us, we're going to score a goal on you type of mentality. These guys have to go out and realize that in some ways, I hate to be drastic here, season is on the line. We have to make playoffs. Atlanta United has to make playoffs. We are a playoff team. Accepting anything less than making the playoffs at the 10th spot even is unacceptable. Like, it's unacceptable. Will I accept it if it happens? Sure. It's been a weird freaking year. But Atlanta United needs to be in the 10th spot or higher. They have the quality to be in the 10th spot or higher. They obviously don't have all of the players. We're well aware of that. But they have the fight. And they need to dial into it. And they're not dialing into it. These guys have fought harder matches prior to Miami, prior to other games this season. They have fought harder matches. Minnesota United, back against the wall, 12,000 crosses into the box, and they stood there and they fought it on a cold night. These guys have that. Atlanta United has the fight. You have to wake up and you have to switch that on, and I want to see that tomorrow.
I think over the last handful of matches, the more that Stephen Glass has been on the touchline, I think that you've seen that from Atlanta United. You haven't seen Atlanta United roll over in any instance this season. And I think that that's key because you could pick your sport. You could have coaching changes, and then the team after a coaching change can sit there and go one of two directions. Atlanta United has not gone the direction of hanging out outside the playoff bar and not wanting to be a part of anything going forward. I think that they've adapted the personality of Stephen Glass. And if anyone has listened to the sideline microphones in matches, then you've been able to hear Stephen Glass. He is constantly engaged in the match, whether it's talking to the officials, talking to the guys, all that kind of stuff. You're seeing him, and I think that they're adapting his personality as a part of their game. So you're not seeing Atlanta United roll over at all with Stephen Glass down there on the touchline. I think that's and it's been nice to see the fight that we've seen from these guys with as disjointed as the lineup can be at times, that they're still chasing after things here this late in the season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you have to be. Go ahead, Kelly.
No, go ahead.
You. Go ahead, Jared.
I was technically waiting for you to chime in, Jared, and then I was like, oh God, okay, let me transition it to him. Hello.
I thought you were as well. I was just waiting on you.
Now that you're both transitioning, I love you both equally. Go, Jared.
Thanks, Dad. Man, they're not going to roll over, and it's going to be one of those things where, how much you can take away from the final score line is not always going to be indicative of how the fight went. Because there have been games this year where you look at the score line and you're like, well, that was just awful. And you're like, if you watch, you're like, they didn't give up the fight, but the individual mistakes at times this year have been what have killed people. So I think if you get past that and you keep those individual mistakes under control, you're in a situation where Atlanta's in a position where they can pull results off of a lot of teams. Now, granted, they're not at full strength because, again, and I don't know if I have a bullhorn big enough for this, you've been playing without any designated players. You have had precisely 45, 50 minutes of designated player activity in the last, month? Maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, you have been, and I don't mean this to sound disrespectful, because it's not, because these guys are actually really good players and they're playing high above what they're getting paid. But you were asking a front line anchored by, especially when Dom was hurt, you're asking, Jake Mulraney and John Gallagher and Adam John, guys who are not supposed to be the bell cows, to be the bell cows. Now, they have answered the bell, but I mean, you don't, it's the same thing with Breck Shea last year and the Breck Shea hate that happened last year. Breck Shea wasn't supposed to be the starting left back in 2019 Atlanta United. I don't know how many times I have to say that. I don't know how many times anybody has to say that. He wasn't brought here to be a starter. Now, Breck is thriving in Miami. More power to him. Super nice dude. He looks like a Who from the live-action Grinch Stole Christmas movie, but super nice dude. And he forever cemented himself when he walked out of the CONCACAF Champions League game in Kennesaw holding an entire pizza in his hands like it was, like it was a book. But
Evening Bandit.
But man,
he wasn't supposed to be a starter. Bello going down changes all of that for you. That's where you're at with some of these guys right now, being asked to do more than they were expected to do. Now, you might see individual mistakes, and that might cost you a game, but don't mistake that for a lack of fight.
Yeah, no, and this is a word that's been used. Atlanta, I've never seen Atlanta roll over. I mean, I take that back. There are some moments where I've thought Atlanta United is rolling over, but that word, in my opinion, doesn't exist in our vocabulary. But you're absolutely right, Jared. We're asking the subs. Practically, we're asking the subs to stand on the front line and win us a championship. I mean, there are some points where we just have to sit back and realize the chess pieces we've been given for this year. And the fact that people need to realize that the interim manager is doing his best with the chess pieces he has. We don't have a king. We don't have a queen. We don't have what's the next best?
Rook, a knight.
A knight. So we're playing without all of those.
That's the secret fifth hour of SDH is negotiating the power rankings of chess pieces. Actually,
chess down here.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a power ranking setup because it is queen. The king only moves one spot in every direction, so he's only limited in usefulness.
You got to kill the king, whatever. So it's at that point in time you realize you're playing without your three best chess pieces, and you're trying to consistently make it work. So can you? I don't know. I don't play chess enough to know that if that's a possibility, but that's literally what you're looking at on this board. You do not have your key pieces, and that's a point that I feel you're right, absolutely does get lost on the way that this all goes about sometimes. So when we're talking about chess pieces, right, let's talk about looking towards this match. Obviously, Jarrett Barco, is he a possibility? This has been in and out. I know there's been black helicopter theories out the wazoo on this. Is there a chance we could possibly see him as a glimpse on the field? And if so, then what does that also mean for the likes of, Dom? Do we see 45 plus minutes out of Dom? I think we'd all love to, but what does that look like? And then, in your honest opinion, I love to get everybody's honest opinion before I bring on the Godfather, Jeff. I think he's a 30-minuter this game. I don't see him pulling another 60. I think you have to switch it with Mo and Jeff. He needs a break. He needs to come out with really fresh legs, and I think the best point in time for Jeff to come out is later in that half. I know I set up a lot, Jared, but go at it.
All right, let's work backwards. So here comes the question, and I'll phrase this back to both of y'all, and we can banter on it for a minute or two. That's fine. What do you think is the best 30 to play Jeff? Because is it late in the game where you might be hanging on to a result, or is it early in the game where you have lost games in the past? And Toronto, if you end up chasing the game, you're in a bad way. So I'd ask both of y'all, because I don't know the answer either, honestly, is would you rather start Jeff and have him give you 45
yeah,
and guarding that back line and keeping things from falling apart in the first 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Or do you save that bullet and, think, okay, we're good enough on the individual mistakes and the non-let-offs to get this done without Jeff?
I'm not sure. And I say this in the fact of the matter that I think Mo Adams can handle it. He's obviously doesn't have the veteran presence that Jeff has, and of course that's going to be missed on the field. But I do feel like Mo brings a different perspective and a different way of playing the game, obviously, than Jeff does. He's not Jeff. He's faster. He's able to maintain pace with midfielders better than Jeff does. Jeff gets a little not flat-footed, but he just doesn't have the same speed that he did. So, and there's some ways that I would see it depends on how you want Jeff to function against Toronto. Obviously, having him there to make sure that shit doesn't hit the fan within the first 25 minutes, first 15 minutes, totally get that. But I think Mo, in some points in times, if you pair Mo with Remedi or if you pair Mo with Hyndman, whatever that midfield could look like, I think Mo can also hold that back line up, especially if we are looking at a possible pairing of Miles and Escobar.
I would like to also point out that Breck Shea just scored.
He did. 33rd minute, 1-1 off a deflection. So the score at Red Bull is now tied at 1s in the 36th.
Oh, no, he just didn't.
Yeah, he just did.
Oh, my Lord.
And to update the standings, that means that Montreal is back in a tie for, they're in 8th at 21 points. Inter Miami is now tied with Atlanta with 19 points. Inter Miami 12th. Atlanta United still in 11th.
I am having a very bad day.
Yeah, we are all right now.
I'm in no
with
mood.
Those numbers. Yeah, none of us are.
You know what, man? Aside from the impact of the standings, go off, Breck. Glad your knee's doing better. Glad you're living your best life in Miami.
After having the ACL issue again like when he was with us, good for him. That's all I got to say. Good for him.
But no, to your point, guys, I would start Jeff and have him give me either 45 or 60, and then bring in Mo if Mo has to kind of track and chase things down and still be that same physical presence. So the idea of 55, 45, 55. Jeff had 57, I want to say last time, and Mo came in for the final 33. That's what I would look at here for this with that combination of those folks defending in the midfield.
It's just hoping that Jeff doesn't then get winded before the time that he would need to be subbed out. That's the only worry I have is his stamina past 45. That's it.
Completely understandable.
All right, keep going.
As you were working from the back. Yeah, you were working from the back and working your way forward.
Yeah, what was the second question? Because I got locked up on Jeff and got distracted.
45.
Dom? Oh, man, I hope so. I don't know. I just don't know, like, him coming back into fitness, like, how many minutes does Dom have in his legs? And then Lennon also plays a role in this, is like, what can Lennon give you? Do you ask them to kind of split it and do one or two of these guys, whether it's them or Jeff, become a halftime sub so you're not burning a sub bank, one of your three banks, to make this move? Whether it involves Jeff, whether it involves Dom. I think in this game, I am a proponent from coming out of the gates, kind of like Butch and Sundance, coming out from behind cover, opening up and emptying out the 6 shooters a bit.
Yeah.
Like, come out firing. Come out and try and hit Toronto the way you should have hit the Red Bulls when in the loss a couple weeks ago. You should have taken down Red Bulls, in my opinion, and you were better for 45 minutes. You just couldn't find the finished product. Create that finishing product by just loading up on what you can in the first half and see where you are at halftime with a guy like Dom, with a guy like Jeff.
Yeah. All right, let me add the beginning of that loaded question that I had that we were working back from and actually bring on the man behind the Iron Curtain, the maestro.
The great and powerful Oz, here he comes.
The Godfather.
The Godfather.
Jason Longshore.
What's up?
Riders up.
meant to replace that with the Alabama fight song tonight.
Jarrett, you can go anytime you want, by the way. If you want to leave, you can. That's fine.
What am I going to go to? The Braves are about to lose another game, and Celtic lost 2-0 today. What else have I got to watch?
That's true. In the last 24 hours, the Braves have lost twice, and Celtic got played off the park by Rangers. It hasn't been good for Jarrett.
It's not fun.
No, it hasn't been good. I want to clean one thing up because I feel like this has been a complication for a lot of people when they talk about this team. It's really easy to say that, you know, they need to be nasty, they need to be bastards, they need to be physical, and then they're fighting in results. Like, these are separate things, and I want to draw the line here because Atlanta United hasn't given up on anything all season long. They fought hard. They have played to the final whistle many, many times. Have they gotten tired? Yeah, absolutely. But they have not been the LA Galaxy. There have not been quite a few teams in the league that when things start to go south, you can watch them pack it in. You can watch them on the field already thinking about what they're eating for lunch the next day.
End of the Ben Olsen reign.
Yeah. I mean, you're not seeing that at all. That's one thing. This team will play hard for their manager. This team will play hard. The only time I had a question about that was the first 45 against Columbus at MLS's back. That was it. All right, even that one you came out and you played hard in the second half. There's a difference, though, between playing the full 90, playing hard, trying to rescue results, and being chippy and being mean on the field and being a little nasty and getting stuck in when you need to. Those are two separate things, and I think the team needs to do more of that. Now, they have been over the last month. Their foul numbers have gone up a bunch. Their tackles have gone up a bunch. Their pressures of opponents has gone up a bunch. They're just a more aggressive team, which is what they need to be, because right now they're not the most talented team. And that's not a knock. I think at times it's easy to say front office, roster, yada, yada, whatever today's narrative is. But go back and look at the lineup from the midweek match. How many of those players are starting when this team is at full strength? Half. Maybe half. Maybe. That's a conversation. I mean, it might be 5. It might be 4. That's what you're seeing game after game after game after game after game. So when you talk about Atlanta's depth, they're competitive with a mostly second-choice lineup, at times third-choice. Mm-hmm. They're competitive, but they're not blowing teams away. So you've got to find somewhere to make up the gap. The place you can make up the gap is being difficult, being combative, being physical, finding ways to tilt the game in your favor. And I think they've done a pretty good job of that. It's not easy because it's a very different way of playing for this team. I don't think they went into the Miami match on Wednesday intending to play as much on their heels as they did. I think Miami played really well, but they figured it out, and they figured it out enough to get a result. And yeah, they didn't get the attack going until after Miami had scored, but Miami, when they scored, they opened the door, they let up, and that fight that Atlanta's had was enough to find a way through and honestly find a way to what could have been a winner. Jurgen Damm could have won that match late. This is going to be more of the same. Toronto's a really difficult team to play. They're a very good team. They are missing some pieces, although it sounds like Michael Bradley will be back for at least some of the match tomorrow. Would not expect him to start. They're trying to get him ready to play 90 once they get into the postseason. They've got a week's break after this match, so It's probably going to be a cameo for him. You'd think maybe 20, 15, something like that, just to get him out and start to build him back up. Josie Altidore not going to be available. Doesn't look like Justin Morrow is going to be available. So you're going to see some different faces. The thing about Toronto, when we talk about lineups and we talk about second choice, Toronto, past what they've been playing lately, they've got Patrick Mullins who can spell Ayo Akinola. They've got Liam Frazier who can spell Jonathan Osorio or Marky Delgado. They've got Tsubasa Endo who can spell one of the wingers, and that's kind of a drop-off. That's about it. Laurent Simon, if he comes in the back line, run at him all day long, please. Mm-hmm. If Eric Zavaleta comes on in the back line, put him under pressure.
2020.
Yeah, I mean, but that's who you're turning to. They don't have an Anton Walks. They don't have a Mo Adams. They don't have these guys. So if they do rotate a little bit because they're tired, you've got to pick on the new player. If they turn to Simon, if they turn to Frazier, if they turn to Mullins, who has played well, but he's a step down from Akinola, in my opinion, put pressure on them. Try to expose them. That's what Atlanta's going to have to do tomorrow.
Yeah. And then go ahead, Jared.
So, and I'll take all three of y'all's opinion on this real quick. Tell me if I'm wrong and if I'm reading this wrong. Toronto didn't necessarily fix their depth issue from 2018. Now, granted, 2018 they were decimated. They didn't necessarily fix it a lot from 2018. It's been some real good injury luck and some really good individual performances. But even with some of the best teams in this league, depth remains an issue in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, in a cap league it will. I mean, you just have some limitations in how deep you can truly be. That's always going to be a problem. It's always going to be a problem in this league because you're going to have those issues. This is a team that is top-heavy. This is a team that's led by an MVP in Alejandro Pozuelo. Pablo Piatti is coming really good. Two very underrated players in Delgado and Osorio. And they went out and they got Omar Gonzalez, which was a great pickup to pair him up with Chris Mavinga. That's a good center back pairing. They've gotten performances out of like Richie Larea, turning him into a right back. Alro playing as an outside back. Some kind of unheralded guys that have played maybe over their heads. The problem is there's just not a whole lot to turn to if people are hurt. Erickson Gallardo hasn't really made the jump that they expected him to. You know, Frazier hasn't quite turned into Michael Bradley Light just yet. Jacob Schaffelberg had a great debut last year against Atlanta. Hasn't really turned into a regular yet. They've still got work to do, and this came up in the Twitch pitch. Shiva asked about how Toronto and Seattle keep doing what they're doing. And they've had consistency. They've had consistency at the top, which has been a good thing. They don't spend in the same ways that Atlanta has. Atlanta will always have more turnover because they're going to attract players that do look at Atlanta as a springboard. Toronto and Seattle aren't necessarily turning into that. What Toronto's trying to do to bridge the gap, Seattle is toying with it a little bit. They haven't really gotten there. I think Atlanta's going all in on it. The consistency should come from the players you develop, your own academy. That should be your bench. That should be who you turn to in these moments. And we've had this conversation about the forward position. You'd love to have, and maybe you will next year, a player like a Jackson Conway who comes through your academy, plays for your second team, produces, develops, keeps getting better, and then he's the one you're turning to because, one, it's cost-effective in a cap. He understands your system. He's played in it for years, and he gives you some of that consistency because he's worked with all the managers in your club. He's been there for so long, even if it hasn't always been with the first team. You're looking for those things where you can. Atlanta can get there, but you're 4 years old. You know, it's tough. It takes a little bit of time, especially to develop your own players.
Yeah, and that's something Seattle obviously has a good advantage over. They've had academy players.
Yeah, they haven't gotten as much of that as they need to, but they've been able to also, I mean, they've been a team that hasn't really been in the supporter shield race, much at all. They've been a team that goes into the playoffs and knocks games out there. They haven't been, in the situation Atlanta was in 18. And last year, to be honest, I mean, Atlanta was third last year. So Seattle's usually like kind of in the middle of the pack in the West. Then they go on a run in the postseason. It's worked for them, but you're building differently that way.
Right. And obviously, let's go ahead and get back to Toronto because we only have a few more minutes here on the Twitch pitch and for the run-up. But let's talk about this matchup against Toronto. Obviously, we talked about, the fight and the grit that Atlanta has had and just sort of how they can dig in and be a little bit more nasty for this game. Who do we see being the key players that Atlanta should be looking out for? Obviously, we talked about Pozuelo. We talked about Piatti. We talked about Akinola. Are there any other players that we see as being key targets? Or as you said, is it really solely top-heavy?
It's a little top-heavy. Pozuelo, you got to cut off the supply lines to him. Piatti is one that you can't sleep on. He can produce for himself and for others. Whoever the forward is, if it's Akinola, if it's Mullins, they provide different challenges. Mullins is a little craftier, not quite as physical. Akinola is a very physical number 9, very, very much of the Josie Altidore school. Miles Robinson coming off what he did against Gonzalo Higuain, you're expecting him to be able to do that again against either one of those options. It's going to be Pozuelo especially because Atlanta hasn't seen a team that plays in the way that Toronto does. Pozuelo will drop. He'll try to find space away from where people are defending him. You've got to make decisions, and you've got to be in proper communication. If it's Jeff, if it's Heineman, if it's Moreno, let's say it's that trio in the midfield, they've got to make decisions on when to pass Pozuelo off because Larentowicz isn't going to chase him all over the field. Okay, if he goes into Heineman's area, if he goes into Moreno's area, they've got to know and they've got to be told. That's going to be tough for a Marcelino Moreno because you're talking about a player who's had, a week of practice now, but, only a week interacting with his teammates.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, how do we see this play? How do we see this match playing out? What is everybody's opinion? I will open the floor with Jarrett. Is he?
Yeah, sure. I was muted. Sorry. Started talking. Just Zoom. Oh, this is Skype. Skype and Zoom both.
Jeez.
Yeah. Whatever. As far
What'd
as
you
this
do?
one goes, I mean. So as far as this one goes, I think Atlanta falls 2-1 in this game. I think they are going to play well. I just worry about one or two individual mistakes with a guy like Pozuelo, who is just having an MVP season, who is in that mode right now and we've seen Atlanta have some really rotten luck this year of, Atlanta made a mistake and it got punished for a goal. They made 2 mistakes in the game and they gave up 2 goals. And Pozuelo is kind of on a run this year where that feels like a thing that could happen to them, where it just kind of goes against them. But I think the game will be incredibly chippy. It'll be incredibly rough. I am taking the over on 1 red card in this game, 0.5 red cards. If that's the over-under, I'm taking the over. Okay. There's at least 1 red in this game. These teams do not like each other.
Yeah.
There has always been some chippiness, and there's always been some dark arts involved when these teams play each other. If Richie Larea gets another penalty kick for kicking the ground, I will throw a TV.
Oh, my Lord. Okay. John, what are your thoughts? Obviously, he took the red velvet driving.
He took the inverted black velvet driving slipper lock of the week.
Okay.
Because he picked Toronto to win 2-1. So I said it was going to be a 1-1 draw. I think it to match Jarrett's thought pattern. I think that Atlanta is going to be physical. You're going to see the fouling. They're going to remind Pozuelo and Piatti that they are in the building and that they are to be paid attention to for the full 90 minutes in the midfield. I think that Pozuelo gets one, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think that Jürgen Damm gets one this time around. So I think Damm gets one in transition. I think that Pozuelo gets one. It's a 1-1 draw.
I'm going to go next just because I want to liven it up a bit. I'm going to say it's going to be 3-2 Atlanta. Who knows?
Wow.
That's not what I said as we were getting prepared. But you know what? At this point in time, F it.
You should check on a gas leak. Maybe light a match, check for a gas leak in your house or something.
I love it.
You know what? We haven't seen a high-scoring game for Atlanta yet outside of the DC United match. That was one-sided against a very poor team. But you know what? I'm at this point in time where I probably am loopy. I've been staying up very late, packing a lot of boxes. I've probably cleaned a lot, so I probably have sniffed a lot of chemicals. But you know why? Wow. 3-2 Atlanta United. If we come back and win at 3-2, though, I'm gonna tell y'all I told you so.
I'm gonna tell. See, now that was one word. I'm gonna tell all y'all, and she did it with the finger.
Exactly. Jason, let's bring us back to reality here. What is your call?
Man, I have to be the downer here. This isn't cool. It's going to go, I think, one of two ways. Go ahead, Jared.
I already did that for you. It's fine. You're not going to top me. It's okay. Unless you think this is just going to be like a beating.
No. I don't think it's going to be a beating. I think there's going to be not a lot in it because Atlanta's got to be smart in their approach. You can't really afford to come in and give up your goal differential good number you have because that's going to end up helping Atlanta, I think. You've got to be smart defensively. You've got to pick your spots going forward a little bit. I could see two teams come in, and it's going to go either Kelly's way, where it's bonkers crazy, and you get a bunch of like sloppy play, a bunch of mistakes because people are tired, or it's going to be two teams that kind of cancel each other out, and it fizzles out as you get longer in it while people are tired. I'm going with the latter. I think it's going to be a scoreless draw.
Wow. Okay.
I'll take that, though. I'll take a point.
I extend my apologies ahead of time to your post-game show and your Twitter feed.
No, that's fine. I'll take it. If it's a scoreless draw, I would, because I still think you're probably going to have a red card. You're going to have something maybe should be a red card. We'll have plenty to talk about. I don't think these teams are going to be boring.
But will Pro actually call it?
Oh, well, I can't.
The money line is going to lie. In this
Yeah.
Call it against us. At least you can bet that being well. It normally always goes against.
If someone gets a red card, I hope they earn it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nick just felt a ripple in the force, too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Where will everybody be watching the match tomorrow? Let's go ahead and start with you, John.
Office HD. We will be here keeping an eye on everything, head on a swivel all day long, but we'll be here in Office HD watching the match.
All right. You, Jarrett, where are you going to be watching the match?
At home, probably laying on my couch and, just hoping for a good end to a sports weekend that really has not gone well. So, come on, Atlanta United. I would actually like something good to think about going into next week.
Yeah.
Because also there's Falcons before that and the Braves Game 7 because, my God.
Why not, all of them at once. I will be still watching at this apartment while I am trying to not freak out about the next one, which will be the day after. So that's where I will be. Obviously, Jason, you have a lot going on. What is going on your neck of the woods on game day? Yeah,
I will not be watching from Toronto or from Hartford, Connecticut. I will be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We'll be piling into the national TV booth after the Falcons broadcast is over. So we'll be calling it from there, watching on a monitor, doing our best. Hopefully we get quality production and not a lot of close-ups and not a lot of crazy replays that make no sense because it's kind of hard to call the game when we can't see it. But we'll be on the air 30 minutes before kickoff, and then we'll have the full-time report for an hour after that. You can listen on 92.9 The Game on your radios. You can listen on the radio.com app. You can listen on the Atlanta United app as well.
And this is one thing
And if Jason is mean to you on Twitter, it's because he's mad he's not in Toronto with Poutine World.
Yeah, Poutineville. Get it right. Show some respect.
Poutineville, yes.
Show some respect.
Poutine World is probably a really bad restaurant like across the street that I just gave.
It's horrible.
The discount poutine is Poutine World.
No,
this is the difference between Angelo's Pizza and Pizza by Angelo's in that episode of The Office.
Mm-hmm. Now, Poutineville is the business. They also had a great Eero place near the last hotel we stayed in Toronto. And I don't get my Excel mints that they don't make in the United States anymore. I don't get those. The Eclipse mints that they used to have in the U.S. that they discontinued. They still make them in Canada.
What? They have those?
Yeah, they're called Excel. I buy them all the time. Like last time at the airport, I think we were in Montreal last time I was in Canada. I bought like 10 packs of the things. And the person at the counter was like, "What? I'm like, "We don't have these in the United States." Oh, okay, I get it.
That's like the Aero Bar when you go to Toronto. You've got to go to Zeller's and get the Aero Bars.
Far better than the Aero Bar.
Okay.
Well,
all right. Well, this has been a fun run-up. We all enjoyed it. We look forward to seeing, obviously, all of you and your reactions on Twitter during the match tomorrow. Where can they catch everybody on Twitter to discuss?
Long shoe.
At OSG Nelson.
Garrett _Smith.
And I am at the Kelly Francis. We will see you again on Friday of next week at 7 p.m. as we discuss the match that we will be coming at against DC United with a new head coach for DC United. So should be very interesting. We will see you guys next time. Thank you for joining.